denial of the Lord's Supper. And that was in the case of the man who had been cohabiting with his mother-in-law, his close relative, right? Not an exact relation. Stepmother, right.
His father's wife.
Got it. That's a serious enough sin that you keep them out of the communion service until they repent.
He uses the same verse that in the Old Testament is meant for stoning, but applying it to excommunication.
Yes, absolutely. Put him out of the church, right? Having nothing to do with him.
Wouldn't stoning be work on the Sabbath?
It's an interesting point. I don't know. That's an interesting point.
Yes.
Did they have a right? Yeah, in my understanding, they killed Jesus on a holy day, on the 15th of Nisan. It's another subject, interesting one.
So they can work on the Sabbath, but he can't.
Yeah. Okay. Right, you got that. We were just doing the 8 kingdom texts. You've got them in your notes. 1:3, 1:6, 8:12, 14:22. And that one says, through much tribulation we're destined to enter the kingdom. That's a down one, that's a tough one. 14:22. Then you get to 19:8, where Paul argued in the synagogue for hours. 20, 24, and 25. And 25 strictly is the only one that has the word kingdom, but it's parallel to the gospel of grace, right? You can shock your friends with that one. They've never heard that preached. And then finally 28, chapter 28, 23 and 30, 31.
Yeah.
That's critical because Luke so cleverly finishes by saying that Paul preached the kingdom to the Jews first. Then he said, I'll take this same salvation, how easy that is, right, to the Jews. Sorry, to the Gentiles. Right? Preaches first to the Jews. Since you're not paying attention, he says, I'll take the same salvation. And Luke then finishes on a grand climax. You're going to enjoy meeting Luke when you meet him, because he really impacted us. That's verse 30 and 31, the kingdom of God preaching. If that's not the gospel, heaven help us. You see what's happened. When Kennedy says, Coleridge Ministries, I've read this to you already once, but let me remind you. Kennedy says, many people think the teaching of Jesus is what Christianity is about. That's not so. What counts is that God came and died for your sins. I wouldn't go there, sir. I wouldn't say that because Jesus might not be pleased with you. Certainly, our sins have to be forgiven. I understand that. But certainly, the teaching of Jesus is everything. 5:9, etc., etc. Now then, let's look at this short studies. If you have that available, you have it, I know, in your collection. This is a remarkable journal article. It's from the WTJ, which stands for the Westminster Theological Journal. You know that the theological world has a mass of journals that are produced month by month for years and years. I mean, decades, centuries even. And so bright people in the church write on particular points. Some of them very, very useful. I found this, I think it was a God thing. I found it in the Oregon Bible College Library sometime. And it says exactly what I would want to say. What's the point of doing this? It's one level harder than just quoting Bible verses, right? He's going to quote Bible verses, yes, but he's writing in slightly more difficult language, perhaps, but it's not difficult. And I think it's absolutely brilliant, this article. I wrote to him and he was pleased to hear from us. Abraham's faith and propositional revelation. What in the world is propositional revelation? Well, everything you say is a proposition, right? So that's just a long-haired way of saying you're saying something. You're making a proposal, right? Abraham's faith. If you get away from propositional revelation, what have you got? Nothing. Just dreaming. Your point, right? Plain language has to be it. Else there's nothing. For his argument that Abraham was justified by faith, what in the world is justified? I want to tell you it's not difficult. It means you are right rather than wrong. When you know that when you type, don't you justify your right margin? We used to have to do that with great labor with type machines. Now, my magic computer does it. That's justifying. You make it straight rather than crooked. That's what justification is.
He put his hand up.
Please.
N.T. Wright contends that there's like two parts to like justification and like righteousness and stuff like that. Like justification, like we're currently justified in the present, but in reality, God's going to justify us in the future by vindicating us via resurrection.
Yeah.
You think that's right?
Well, I think it's too complicated. Salvation is on a process. So let's analyze a race, a 100-yard dash. Or in England, we call it a 100-yard sprint. Let's not argue about where does the race happen? When they start, or the middle, or the end. What? It's a race. So yes, you've been justified, you've been saved. I've stressed you are being saved. We won't look up all the verses again. You are being saved. And actually the emphasis is on, and you do this for the students that you're teaching, salvation is now closer to me than when I first believed. That's Paul. Romans 13:11, I think. Right? You're advancing towards the kingdom.
Yeah.
Salvation, Paul says, is now closer to me than when I first believed. Do you see that? Not further away from me. So the emphasis is on the continuation. That's the parable of the sower. Do you see that? Jesus' parable of the sower does it all. So that's Romans 13:11, very great verse. Salvation is now closer to me than when I first believed. So I don't really understand the argument. It's not that difficult. Yes, you were justified. You're being justified. In
ultimately, like God's going to justify us in the future.
That's true.
So there's
right.
justification now. He's going to justify us in the future.
I think it's absolutely right, and we could simply call it being right rather than wrong.
Yeah.
And the verse in your notes that you might want to add here would be Isaiah 53:11. You can preach this forever. Isaiah 53:11, I remind you, says that we are saved by the knowledge of Messiah. This is a very unpopular verse. I understand we have to believe in the sacrifice of Jesus fully. We have to believe in his resurrection, otherwise we're wasting our time. I get that. But you must also believe in the knowledge of Messiah. Isaiah 53:11. He's a rabbi, he's a teacher. That's what you're up against. You see, I've only come to that more fully in the last 2 months, where I keep telling you Kennedy's statement about many people think teaching of Jesus is important. That's not. That is fundamentally wrong to me. God is his judge, by the way. Jesus is his judge, not me. But I would have to say, Dr. Kennedy, I just don't think you're hearing the scriptures. One of the best verses, the voice from heaven says what? This is my son. Listen to him. Isn't that beautiful? Is that difficult? I don't think so. No. Your challenge, folks, is to bring the faith simply and clearly, but also strictly. You can't be waffly and say, well, no, sex on the side is not going to... Yes, it is. You're going to lose out on salvation if you don't repent. Can you be forgiven? Yes, of course, we know that. But there are certain guidelines. My impression is that God is quite a tough mentor, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If I heard the impression.
There's the one, the parable of the man who has to go to get his kingdom and come back.
Yes.
And what the man
19.
says to him is, I was afraid because I know you are an exacting man.
Right.
I know the kind of,
yes.
you said, a tough mentor.
Yes. And perhaps he's right in that view.
I mean, in some sense, he definitely,
I think he expects us to get it right. I'm the son of an admiral. Dad was actually very gentle. He was a kind person, but he did expect us, like Kent and his children, right? Zachary, shut up, sit down. 1, 2, 3. No, I don't think you treat Sophia much too sweet. Obedient, you know.
Oh,
a little glare from Mommy's eyes, and Sophia's running to do what she's got to do. No, I mean, if you quote the bad text, you know, the non-good news text, you've got Jesus saying, multitudes will say in that day, Lord, Lord, look what we did. That's Matthew 7:21. He's just finished saying, beware of false prophets. Watch out for fake religious teaching. That's his warning, isn't it? Matthew 7. Having given the Sermon on the Mount, very challenging. Beware of false religion. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, Kyrie, Kyrie, we preached in your name. We did miracles in your name. And then I will say to them, I mean, isn't this an awful statement?
I never did.
Get out of here. I never recognized you. What? Excuse me, Jesus, that's a bit tough.
Which
Matthew 7.
Yeah.
that one always confused me, not to get us off topic or anything, but I just, okay.
We get off topic very easily.
Should I ask later? I can, that's no problem.
Go
Is
ahead.
it Matthew 5:7?
No.
7.
It's the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Let me give you the exact verses. You've got the whole Sermon on the Mount, which sounds awfully like the teaching of Jesus is important, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Unless you're a dispensationalist and you say that's only for Jews, you're going to meet it. You're going to meet it. Oh, Jesus was a teacher to Jews. It's not for us. What?
What do they do with Matthew 28? We're supposed to go to the whole...
They're lost. It's where you come in, and if they're going to hear you, that verse will do it. So you get to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, all the blessings. This is my son, listen to him. Chapter 7, we've got this one. 13. I would start with 13 when you're reading this to your friends. And your Jewish roots friends, of course, understand this, but they got on the other extreme. You see that? Isn't that fascinating? They crawl off on the other side. Enter through the narrow gate. For the gate is wide, the way is broad that leads to apolia, awful word, destruction. I think not endless torture. That's another side we dealt with a little bit. But destruction. And there are many who enter by it. That's awful. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life with a capital L, the life of the age to come. And there are few who find it. Now, I'm of the wider hope, belief that there will be others who have never heard, so that's another subject. But for the moment, if we've been exposed to this truth, then we are really under the gun. Is that the expression? Under the gun. Few who find it. Then, in the same breath, notice, how is it that few find it? In verse 15, beware of false prophets. That's the problem. That seems to be where the mind of Messiah is going on. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You'll know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, are they? Nor figs from thistles, are they? No, obviously not. So then, every good tree that bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. That's Psalm number 1, you know that. No. The tree. Oh, Psalm 1 is the summary of all Psalms. Introduction. Psalm 2 is really Psalm 1 in the Hebrew mind, but Psalm 1 is the introduction. It's about a tree that is either good or bad. So we're all like trees. I live on 35 acres of forest. We're all like trees. We're all growing, producing fruit.
Planted by the river.
Exactly. So what did God give us? That marvelous creek there. I watch this every day. That creek never stops. It's flowing water from a spring fed outside the property. Even in extreme drought, that water keeps coming over rock. And we've got a massive trees. So I think about trees. We're all trees. I like the analogy. So, a tree then is known by its fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes. We know that. So every good tree then, every good human being, bears good fruit. But the bad tree bears bad fruit. People, I think, misuse this to mean only sort of good morality, jolly good chap theology there, jolly good chap theology. If you're a good person, you're doing well. Well, we're all good persons in England. We do nothing about any of this. So I don't think that's going to quite make it. What people don't realize is that truth is also one of the fruits of the Spirit. The fruit of light and truth. Paul has that phrase. So truth is very important. 2 Thessalonians 2:10 says, because a passion for truth they did not have in order to be saved. Tough verse. That strikes me as interesting. I do believe then that believing what Jesus says, including the gospel, must be important.
You're calling him a liar otherwise.
That's the danger, isn't it? That's the danger. Huge danger. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit. I must say, as I get older, I watch all of this now. Our fig trees is getting tiny figs right now. By the way, do you know that figs are very good for you? Health. You're into health. Figs are very anti-cancer. Did you know that?
Figs.
Figs.
Dry or
Manna.
I like fig Newtons.
Cut out the Newton part and eat the fig. I learned that just yesterday. Figs. My wife gets a lot of magazines from the naturopathic food society. Yeah, those people. But that's another side. Basically, we're killing ourselves with what we eat. Very dangerous. Don't kill yourself. Anyway, figs are important. Fig trees. Every tree that doesn't bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. And George would say, into the fire.
That's not a joke parable.
It's not a joke parable. We shouldn't do jokes on it. It's too serious, actually. Right? Thrown into the fire. That sounds like good SDA extinction rather than torture forever. So then, you will know them by their fruits. Recognize them. Then, same breath, right? The paragraphing here is unfortunate in the Bible. Do you realize that? In fact, even versification is unfortunate. Chop it all up into verses. You have to do it, but it's good to read it through as though there are no verse markings. 21. Not everyone who says to me, Jesus, Kyrie, Kyrie, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, stroke God. You first tell your people, kingdom of heaven, no different from kingdom of God, no different at all, no different. But those who do the will of my Father in heaven. And if he's a tough mentor, we'd better pay attention.
Yes.
We do the will. Many will say, same breath, right? Many, multitudes in my translation. I risk the word multitudes. I'm afraid a lot of people will say multitudes. Lord, Gideon, didn't we prophesy? Prophesy would be preaching in general, all sorts of preaching, including prediction, but not excluding preaching of all sorts. In your name, as representing you, right? Jesus, we took the Christian name and we preached as Christian preachers. That's the same. And in your name, we actually had the power to do exorcism, isn't it? Right? Exorcism. In your name. There's a power of some sort. It didn't seem to be the right thing. And in your name, we actually did many dynamis. You heard the word dynamic there? Greek? Dynamis. Miracles. We raised the dead, Jesus. Come on. You saw us raise the dead. Whatever it was. And then I will declare to you, I never knew you. Depart from me, quoting the Psalms here, right? Psalm 6:8, quoting straight out of the Psalm. Jesus is filled with the Old Testament. Get out of here. I never knew you. That's the worst verse in the Bible to me. Speaking on my toes. Therefore, same thought. Everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house. Yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. I like that, because the rock is the confession, you know. On this rock I will found my church. The confession of Jesus as Messiah, as Messiah, as Messiah. Interesting, right? On that rock, solid rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and doesn't act on them, like an idiot, who built his house on sand. Rain fell, floods came, winds blew, slammed against the house. It fell, and great was the fall. And what do you say when you've read that? I'm speechless. What can you say? By the way, Alan read the text in Job very well. That's part of being a good preacher. He read from a paraphrase of Job. Very, very good. And then he said something about Jesus wept. Why did he weep? Because death is not meant for any of us. Death is an infuriating thing. Come on, I don't want to die, I want to live. Death is maddening, right? Sad, and we weren't meant to die. We were meant to live.
Was that John 11:35? Jesus wept?
Yes, Jesus wept.
I guess my confusion was the part where he says, I never knew you.
Yeah, I never knew you.
That makes me think of these people.
Yeah. They never got on the right track.
Because the fact that they're saying, we cast out demons, we did
Yeah.
miracles, I'm thinking the only way you can do that is through the Spirit.
Yes, maybe not. But
And I'm wondering,
Maybe not.
these are the people who thought they were doing these
Right.
things but weren't, or they were powered by some other source.
that's right.
Or people who maybe
Next question.
God was with but then left. I don't know.
That's possible too. You do have both parts. You can begin the famous text, some people believe for a while. That's Jesus. It doesn't say some people pretended to believe for a while. They did actually believe. I'm afraid we have people in our own experience who have given up the faith. I won't spend time to tell you people who would have sat in classes like this even, who down the line abandoned the faith. We don't want to do that. We are responsible for each other. Keep an eye on each other too. We see our friends, brothers and sisters going astray. We need to try to.
This reminds me a little bit of the passage of the 10 virgins.
Yes.
Did he also say to 5 of them, I never knew you as well, even though he clearly did to invite them into the...
He abandoned from the kingdom. But they were virgins, so I take that to mean that they had the pure faith, but they didn't do anything with it. I think the fact that they're virgins suggests that they were not just pagans.
Because he says the same thing, like, I don't recognize you. Something like that. But he's the one, I think, that invited them in the first place,
Exactly.
so he does know
But that would be the situation. Not once saved, always saved, right? No sass. That's Sean's phrase. The truth is that you have to run the race to the end, right? That's why I'm against the Billy Graham system, which says it wouldn't matter if you rob the bank every day, die for the rest of it. You still go to heaven when you die. That's got to be false. It makes it too easy in a way. It's comforting, but I don't think it's true. It would be soothsaying. That's what soothsayers do. They soothe you with their sayings, but they're deceiving.
The parallels, Luke 13:27, where he says,
Yes.
I do not know where you are from.
Yes.
Depart from me,
Right.
all you evildoers.
Yeah. Your origin, your source, right, exactly.
13, 12?
27.
The Lucan version is even more powerful. But we ate and drank. You ate and drank in our presence. We ate and drank in your presence. We had communion with you, whatever.
Oh, wow.
Tiny streets.
Yes, you taught in our streets. We knew about Christianity. Come on. I don't know. God is the judge of all this. You talked about in the car coming over. Jesus is the judge. I'm not competent to know exactly how all that looks. I don't know. But I'm alarmed by these verses.
And then he takes it a step further in verse 28. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Amen.
And when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets of the kingdom of God, you yourselves will be thrown out.
Okay. Are you preaching to us? You are. Jesus is. That's very striking. So we get rather unintelligent questions on email. Will we recognize each other in the kingdom? Come on, folks. Will we know grace in the... Of course. Grace is grace. Christianity, you tell your friends, is the only world religion which insists on the continuity of personality. Yes, you die, God exists, but when you're raised, you'll be glorified, but we will know grace. We will. We'll have to be introduced to grace if we haven't met it before. But it says, when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, touch me, Jesus said. I'm not a spook, because I've got flesh and bones, Jesus said that. I have flesh and bone as a resurrection. You will. Flesh and bones, but not flesh and blood. That's a subtle difference. You could still have blood, by the way. You could have spiritual blood. But the point is, flesh and blood means you in your present constitution. Flesh and blood, that's you in your present mortal human constitution cannot enter the kingdom. You've got to be transformed. But it doesn't mean you don't have bones when you're transformed. Because Jesus said, I've got flesh and bones. So we'll recognize you. Can say to your audiences, you're a good-looking lot now, but you ain't seen nothing yet. Your face is going to shine like the sun. It's great. Great stuff. I really am glad about your ministries, because think of the fun you're going to have with us. Send you to Ethiopia, you're going to have a lot of fun. You had a lot of fun when the Jewish people cursed you to hell, right? Not really. That's rare. They had Yahweh written on the back.
Man, I actually admire them in some ways. I really do.
They're not having a faith. Okay, that's that. Now, back, we never get to this, but I really want to go through this. We'll get some of it. Justification by faith means being right rather than wrong, right? Tom Wright can use the famous phrase. But it's no more than being right rather than wrong. The question is, how do you get to be right rather than wrong? Straight rather than crooked? Okay.
It's a good question.
Paul selects as his textual base Genesis 15:6. Right? What does it say? Somebody read that. This is a good article. I do recommend you take some time to read this through. It's a powerful article. 15:6, you know what it is.
It says...
Yep. We started a couple of weeks back on the Genesis material, 13, 14, 17, and 12. What does 15:6 say? We know it well.
But he believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness.
Got it. He believed what God said. You see how easy that is? He said to him, look at the land, east, north, south, and west. Genesis 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17. Those verses we always preach. And look at the land. Don't look up in the sky. All this land I'm going to give to you, and your seed. He hasn't got a child yet, right?
No.
What did Abraham do right? Did he suddenly become, quote, a good person? He did that too. Did he, give up smoking? Well, that would be good too. Right? Did he stop getting too heavy on food that was making... Yeah, all of that's good. Good stuff. But it's not salvation in itself. He believed God. The Greek actually says he believed God. Just not even believed in God. It's the same thing. If I believe in you, I believe you. There's no difference. But to be quite clear, it's the same as Mark 1:14 and 15. Repent and believe the gospel, not believe in the God. It's the same thing, right? There's no way out of it. You're to believe what God says. You always use in Zechariah, who didn't. What happened to him?
He jumped down.
Isn't that a great lesson? You are to believe what God says. So if people are going to mess with Scripture and argue about, well, we don't know who wrote this book, or don't go there. It's Scripture. Don't argue about who wrote the book of Revelation. It doesn't essentially matter. It's 22 chapters of text of Scripture. Right? I think if you lose that simplicity, you're supposed to believe what God says. And Abraham did that. He believed God, and God said, you're my man. Isn't that lovely? I can understand that. I love the fact that you believe me when I said my 1.4 ton bridge across our creek floated away in the middle of the night. And you don't say, Anthony, you're lying. Because we function on a basis of mutual trust all the time, don't we? We should.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're to do with God. If God says, and I'm the God of the universe, I'm saying, Abraham, you're going to get this land. He was smart enough to say, I believe it. Isn't that beautiful? Then God said, you're my man. Doesn't mean he was sinless. Doesn't even mean he was ultimately going to be saved. You have to continue through the test. But right now, you're done good. I think that's a very easy concept. So that's the key verse, is textual base, if you like. Just like we've said, Acts 8:12 is one of your textual bases, right? When they believe Philip, same thing. When they believe Philip, said Philip again, oh, tell me more. And you'll meet people like this. We had a tea party 3 days ago. A couple from England, from the Hebrides. They're living in the Hebrides, north part of Scotland. Incredible people. The lady was born in Leeds, and they are strong creationists. Their job is to go around and start little creationist movements. Passion. Became Christians at the age of 40. We had a very vigorous tea party. My wife serving English tea. And it was very, very exciting because they said, we don't want to leave. We like your excitement about the Bible. We don't want to leave. You're going to meet that all over there. Tell me more. Stay another day. Oh, we want to hear more about that. Okay, that's Abraham. 15:6. There the argument moves from a consideration of Abraham's faith to the priority of Abrahamic covenant over the... Yes, it moves from Abrahamic covenant over, notice your friends, the Yahweh people, right? Over the Mosaic covenant. It's important to distinguish between the Abrahamic covenant and the Mosaic. If you're going to go under the Mosaic, then you're going to have to circumcise all your males. That's quite clear. Etc. And that's where it becomes foggy for people. So stay with the Abrahamic covenant. You mentioned the divorce thing. Moses said we could have a divorce. You're right, Jesus said. He did. Why? Because you are so hard-hearted, Moses had to concede that you can have a divorce for whatever, and it isn't even clear what it was for. Not even clear. But I'm telling you, Jesus said, go back earlier to Genesis and see if you can get that divorce out of it. You can't. Isn't that beautiful? Your friends couldn't see that, you see. They're blind there. They have not seen that. They didn't understand what Jesus said.
They don't understand the implications that might have.
They don't. They're still stuck with the veil of Moses, and that's a danger for all of us. So the Abrahamic covenant. Here it is. Choice of 15:6 shows that paragraph. For Paul, faith is neither a work. It's not a work exactly. It's not. It's not something you just struggle to work at. It does not. Firstly, that at least, nor an intuition. Certainly not just an intuition, but a persuasion of the promises as they're summed up in Christ. That's wonderful. Isn't that what you mentioned? Acts 19:8. Paul was there persuading them. Some were persuaded. Others refused to believe. Isn't that clear? That's an argument, proposition. Come, let us reason together, God says. Isn't that great? We're given a brain to think. Oh no, it's all about the heart. You're too intellectual. We're all different emotionally. Some of us are much more emotional. I see that. But we can all think. Okay. By drawing attention to the covenantal orientation of Abraham's faith, it's orientated towards a covenant. Paul shows, I love this, that he understood the difference between believing in God and believing God. You can waffle and say, well, I believe in God. You've also got to believe God. You see that? There shouldn't be any difference. But they create a false dichotomy. It's not that, but it's that. Creating a falsehood, self-deception. Oh, we believe in God. The question is, do you believe God? You see? So the faith of Jesus, what does that mean? Does it mean faith in Jesus, or does it mean the faith that Jesus himself expressed? Both things. Don't create a false dichotomy. Okay, he believed God. Between subjective faith and its objective content, you have to have both. God speaks and we believe. It implies that Abraham understood the relation of both. To argue in contrast, now he's coming against the error, as I would, to argue in contrast that, quote, Abraham believed in God rather than in the promise. You see how dangerous that is? Oh, he believed in God. I cannot believe in you if I think you're lying to me all the time. I have no faith in you as a person. I think it's very clear, but he's really put his finger on the issue here. Don't argue, as he goes in quotes there, he's arguing against his enemies, that he clung to the God who had promised rather than to what had been promised. See how bad that is? You cannot cling to God and say, I don't believe what you say. Well, I'm clinging to God. No, no, you're making it up. You cannot make it up. God calls the shots. Great saying. If Abraham clung to God, as man says correctly, it was to the God who revealed himself in and by his what? Word. And I've tried to teach you that the word is the word of the kingdom, right? Not vaguely a lecture on the Bible. That's very, very important. Who would be pleased to hear that? Narratives of theophanies, that's appearances of God in an angel, involving the patriarchs, established the priority of the word as the mode of divine self-disclosure. I don't really like all that long language, but you see what it's saying? You tell us who you are by your word. Until you speak, hard for me to know, even smile, we get, that's nice, we know you're friendly, but you could be putting on a show. When we hear you speak, didn't Jesus say, the mouth speaks out of the abundance of the heart, being the whole person? Then we know who you are. We know God through his word. We don't make it up. He calls the shots. Easy. And the little old lady in your front row will love this, because it's common sense. Okay, Abraham said. N.T. Wright says, N.T. Wright has lots of good things to say. The nature of that faith, not in the sense of analysis of the act of believing, but in the sense of an analysis of what is believed. Wright's got it right. The analysis is a bit complicated, but what was believed, the content, is of vital importance for Paul's work. Distinction is important. The knowledge of God is mediated through his word. I get it. I hope that makes perfect sense to you. Romans 4 makes clear that God's self-disclosure, his unpacking of himself through the word of promise, it's not only a word, it's a word of promise, is the reason for Abraham's subjective faith. That makes me think that if you were the devil, what would you do? You keep the promises and the word away. You keep saying, oh, believe in Jesus, don't you? Believe, please believe. But well, I'm not going to tell you what it is you have to believe. That's what I would do if I was the devil. That's what he's getting at.
Yeah, because it makes it seem like people are okay. But
it's whitewash. My wife uses the expression, gives them a pass from me. If I was doing a lot of work on abortion right now, it's absolutely shattering, awful. She's just read a book from a man who did 70,000 abortions and then repented and wept bitterly and will never, ever, ever pull the limbs off a baby from the womb. That is awfully bad, isn't it?
Very much so.
If you
You
go
know, in Ireland, they don't do abortion.
That's because the Catholics are against it. You see, Roman Catholics don't believe in abortion. I have to praise them for that.
Yeah, that's very good.
No, it's actually Southern Ireland is Roman Catholic, so you're talking about, I think the north part of Ireland is Protestant.
Oh, yeah.
They fought for years, by
They
the way.
still do.
Yes.
Jacob Parr, one of our,
Yeah.
he's from Canada. Have you met him?
Yes. Yes.
He says if you go to Northern Ireland, there's even little children will ask you if you're a Catholic.
Right.
If your answer to that's yes, they'll gang up on you and they'll beat you to death.
You don't remember the wartime, but they had war between the north and south part of Ireland for years. I mean, killing went on for years. It finally came to an end. And notice that was a religious war, in a sense, because the Catholics were in the south, the bigger area. They would not believe in abortion, so that makes sense. Catholics, to their credit, we have to give credit where credit is due, do not think it's right to kill babies in the womb. But who does? The atheists, the agnostics, and quite a lot of the Protestants. Now the language trick, they call it pro-choice. Oh, you wouldn't want to take a choice away, would you? Let them choose to kill their baby or not. Come on. You see how clever that is? It's all in the words you say.
A
Tricky.
doctor said to a woman that she wanted to do abortion
Yeah.
because she has already one daughter, and the doctor said, "Okay, let's kill the daughter, that daughter. Let this child live."
Great lesson.
She what?
Great
yeah, but it's
lesson.
the same.
Isn't that, did you hear the story?
That's
That's
clever.
very really it's a bombshell. Okay, well, let's kill the living one.
Yeah.
Oh no, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So then you use Luke 1:43, where Mary says, Elizabeth says, isn't it great that the mother of my Lord, Messiah, has come to see me? That is my Lord Messiah in the womb. Mary's pregnant, right? Elizabeth, wow, the mother of my Lord. Luke 1:43. Preach it 5 times every Sunday. Luke 1:43. Sorry. Go ahead.
I went to one of the, like I typed in abortion official site or something, and one of the top 2, I think, like the site for abortions, I wanted to hear what their argument is for why, like whether they would think that, you know, because I guess some people think that it's not really life there, and so you're not really committing murder. And I looked on their page to see where they would address this issue. They talk with all sorts of things, like safe sex or whether it's okay to do or not, like. But they did not touch the issue of what about, am I killing life or not? Nowhere on the page. Oh. I was like, wow, that's a way to avoid the.
Got it.
I think it's.
Yeah. Bob was going to give a lecture on the Saturday night of our conference. It's hard for you guys to be there, but you're very welcome to come and hear any or all of what comes. 100 people will gather from different places. April 28th it starts. But she's done a lot of research, a lot of reading on that, and it's utterly horrifying. Pro-choice. Oh, pro-choice. I mean, who'd be against choice? Choice. We all want choice, don't we? Until you tell that story, okay, well, I choose to kill the other one. Oh, my goodness. How bad is this? Very bad. That makes the kingdom more vital, isn't it? You are going to fix this. You'll be able to say, woman, don't go there. First of all, don't have sex outside of marriage, because that probably has created the problem. Let's put a stop. And you in the kingdom, you'll be able to do it. Put a stop to that, and we won't have this problem. Okay, we seem to get off on lots of things here. So then he says, the position has been put like this. Every word is worth reading slowly. According to the apostle, there were 2 facets to Abraham's faith. One was personal, the other propositional. The latter, propositional, was essential to the intelligibility of the personal side. Is that clear to you? You cannot say, I have a personal relationship with God or Jesus, and ignore the propositions. It means you're making up the faith, not God. You certainly must have a personal relationship, but it must be based on the word, the word, the word. That's what this class is about. As indicated, the propositional facet of Abraham's faith is the word of the covenant promise, which for me, of course, is the word of the kingdom. There it is, Genesis 12, 15, 17. We read them already. Remember, we went through those. Specifically, here the promise of Genesis 15:5, which says, it gives a citation, epistesende Abraham to Theo. That's Abraham believed God, just in the dative case, not believed in God even. He simply said to God, I believe it. He had never seen the land, nor have you, and yet you're believing it. That's faith. You guys have faith. You believe in the promise of the kingdom. That is faith. God is pleased with that. This is the promise that Abraham would be the father of numerous descendants. How many children did he have right now? How old was Sarah?
Sarah.
Yeah. Later on, 90. There's faith, right? Abraham passed that test. When God finally said, now I want you to get up and kill your child, had the child by that time, Isaac. Take a knife and slay him. Wait a minute. You just told me that through that son we would have the promise. The only thing is, God can resurrect that son. That's the faith. You see, he passed the test. What was it? Belief in the resurrection. Isn't that brilliant? It's brilliant. That was an ultimate test. And you're going to be tested, you guys. We've all been tested. You will be tested. There'll be moments in your life when you wonder if God even exists. And that's where you need friends to keep you going. That's wonderful, though. Justification, then, this was the ground, the basis of his justification. The implied logic is that without the divine word, the word of the kingdom, the word of the land promise, Abraham would not have been justified because he could not have become a believer. You see, without the word you can't be a believer. Oh my goodness, this is so good. That's Luke 8:12. I'll run it to you one more time. Luke 8:12. It's one of your verses. When anybody hears the word of the kingdom, I'm importing Matthew 13:19, the word of the kingdom, gospel kingdom. When anybody hears that, the devil is right there to snatch that word away so that he cannot believe it and get saved. Wow. Isn't that worth 3 preachings per Sunday? I would think so. All right, so that's exactly his point here. From the moment he spoke, God was no longer agnostos theos, unknown God. I love that. You should do some Greek, by the way, and Hebrew. Enough to get by, if you can, some stage. Until God spoke, when God spoke, God was no longer agnostos theos, unknown God. And Abraham was no longer aseris, which means unworthy. It was no longer impious, no longer a sinner. Right? He was right. The moment God spoke, and Abraham believed the promises, then God is right. So you guys, we can say, you are right, rather than wrong. Not perfect, not sinless. I see that. We all have things to learn. I get that. But you're on the right track if you believe what God says. The dynamic of faith. What does this mean for the propositional, means making statements, aspect of Abraham's faith? It means that not only did his faith require an appropriate propositional content. Yeah, you've got to have content, right? It's the question is, what is the gospel, right? That's what we do. What's the content of the proposition of this gospel? The propositional content was the dynamic. This is not boring doctrine. This is life. You believe the truth, it's going to give you even physical energy. You eat right, you're going to feel better. If you eat spiritual stuff that's pure, not poisoned, you're going to do better. Isn't that right? We're not talking boring doctrines here. If we were, I'm out of here. If we're just arguing Scripture so we can sound good, that's awful. It's going to get you immortality. It's worth it, all right?
Very good.
I think it's a good point. What does this mean? Okay, the dynamic, I like that. He could say on the one hand that the promise came by faith, yes. Somebody read for me, please, Romans 4:13. You got that? 4:13.
Their throat is an open grave.
No, 4:13.
Oh, sorry.
Romans.
For the promise to Abraham or to his descendants that he would be heir of the world was not through the law, but through the righteousness of faith.
That's you, the heir of the world. You are heirs. God is going to be very gracious when He gives you the whole of Georgia, the whole of Kenya, the whole of Moldova, and the whole of Russia. It's yours. Now fix it.
Is verse 13 is a word for world just land, or does he
It's
use
the word ekumeni, economy. The whole, my dad would have said the whole shooting match.
The whole shebang.
The whole shebang. It's American, British shooting match. The whole shooting match, the whole thing. God, He was heir of the world. Isn't that a great text there? You are heir of the world, heir of the land, heir of the earth, heir of the world. It's the world to come, the same in Hebrews 2:5, the economy to come, ekumeni, economy. The world order to come is what we're speaking about. You get it. So 4:13 is good. I have an article at my side I wrote on the promise to Abraham that he would be heir of the world. Sometime down the line you want to refresh some of this, it's right there outside. On the other hand, faith comes by hearing. I love this one. How does faith come? Hearing the promise, which is identified as the word of Christ, not the word of God, mistranslated in the King James, not right in the King James manuscript, actually Messiah's word. This is my son, this is him. It fits, doesn't it? I can see how this coheres in your mind. You've thought about this enough that it really coheres. Okay, then there's a whole lot of footnotes there where I haven't followed up on these, but I will sometime. Hooper wrote a thesis on the continuity of the Abrahamic covenant. These would be worth chasing down. You can find them online, probably. Various dissertations. This man understood it. I did talk to him on the phone. He's in a church in Wales. He was interested to know of our Abrahamic faith. Okay, the object of this. Turn over the page, if you would, for a second. We're almost through time. Coming up. The dynamic of faith. There it is. The word of Christ, Romans 10:17. The word of Christ, I'm reading on page 320, the end of the paragraph. This word of Christ, which is the rhematos Christou. Rhema is the same as word. Rhema in modern Greek. Same as logos, really. If the word of Christ is referred to in Romans 1:16 as the power of God. Let's finish with this text. Romans 1:16. Please read that for me, Mr. Reader, from your machine or otherwise. Romans 1:16.
For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek.
Okay. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the dynamis. It's life and power and energy for those who take it in. And it's very powerful. You can see then, finally with this, the devil must mess with the gospel. He has to mess with the gospel. He can go on talking about God and this in Jesus, I'm being cynical now, really, but I have to be. But don't mess with the gospel, is what these people say. You had a good experience there. You saw Jewish roots at its worst. Terribly confused. They need your help. And imagine, you insist on physical circumcision. Oh, they say, well, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it for obedience. I'm doing it for salvation. That's what they say.
No, these people think it's both.
Both, even both.
They think that
There's no difference anyway.
that's true.
Get it?
At least they're clear about that.
That's right. That's wrong. Paul, in the book of Galatians, is impassioned. He says, you do the stuff that you're not supposed to do under Moses. You're losing Jesus.
They saw it there for a second, and I don't know how they...
Your faith is in vain.
The devil is very good at
Yeah.
being hidden in tradition.
Very skilled. He sees how stupid we are as a human race.
He's had a long time to work at it.
I guess yes, he has. He watches us. There's so much here that I am not competent to judge. I don't know where all the lines will fall. Jesus is the judge. You know that. I do think the more you know, the more you're responsible for. And that's where it becomes. If I had not come and spoken to you, Jesus said to the Pharisees, you wouldn't be guilty. But now I've told you, they accused him of being God all the time, right? You keep saying you're like God. Well, actually, they weren't quite right. Think of other people who say the same thing. It's not so good.
He was just, we were just learning about how John's gospel has this motif of Jesus will say
Yeah.
a parable,
Yeah.
and they'll take it completely literally.
Absolutely.
And it's in the whole book.
Something.
You're not supposed to do that.
Right.
The Jews misunderstand him every time.
They do. And he says, your father is the devil. That's a nice thing to say something. Therefore, you do the works of the devil. Because they say, we're children of Abraham. Come on. We're the real people. We're real things. Wait a minute. Your father is the devil, and you don't understand a word I'm saying, Jesus said to them. Wow.
It's a bad place to be.
Bad place to be? Okay, here's what then to do for next week. Read your portion of the Kingdom book, if you would. Glance at least one or two of the lessons in here. One is enough. And I would love it if you could spare a little time to read the rest of this. I want to go through the rest because it's really good stuff.
Okay.
Have fun.
Sounds good.
Talk to everybody. You will be